Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel where I talk about all things to do with machine embroidery and running a small garment decorating business from home. In today's video, we're going to be looking at using a hobby embroidery machine for the first time. If you're new to my channel, my name is Lauren and I have been machine embroidering for around about 7 years. In that time, I've gone from using one single needle embroidery machine that looked a lot like this, to using several industrial multi-needle machines to produce stock for my online business. So in this video, we're sort of going to be winding back the clock and I'm going to be using this single needle Poolin EOC05 hobby embroidery machine for demonstration purposes. This video is going to cover what you need to get started with machine embroidery aside from the embroidery machine itself. We're also going to be looking at how to transfer designs from your computer onto your embroidery machine. Then we're going to look at how to hoop up materials, how to actually sew out designs on that material, and we're also going to be doing some basic troubleshooting, just covering a few problems that you might encounter as a beginner. Aside from things like what designs a machine includes and its operating system, hobbyist embroidery machines are largely very similar in terms of things like how they're threaded, how to hoop up material, and how to sew out projects. So even if you don't own a Poolin embroidery machine, then this video will still be relevant to you if you are just starting on your machine embroidery journey. So let's start with what you need in addition to the embroidery machine itself. Number one is top threads, and it's really important to remember that machine embroidery uses a specific type of thread. You can't just put any sewing thread into your embroidery machine and expect it to work. I personally like to use brands like Madeira, Isocord or Kingstar, but there are loads of other brands available, so just try them and test them out and see which threads work for you. Next is your bobbin thread, and this usually comes in black or white, or it comes on pre-wound spools. The Poolin embroidery machine comes with its own bobbin winder as well, so you can wind your own bobbins on your embroidery machine. The next important piece of material is your stabilizer. It's in the name what stabilizer does. It stabilizes your materials to support the design and prevent puckering and gapping within that design. There are two main kinds of stabilizer which you'll come across most often. That is cutaway and tearaway, and I'll talk about that more later in the video. Next, you're going to need material to embroider onto, like a hoodie or t-shirts, or if you want to make standalone patches, I use polyester felt for that. I'd always recommend stitching out your design on a scrap of material before embroidering it onto the final product if it is a new design that you're stitching out for the first time, just to make sure that you are pairing that design and garment with the correct stabilizer. You're also going to want to get yourself a sharp pair of scissors to tidy up your projects after you finish them. Having a USB stick is also very handy for transferring designs from your computer onto your embroidery machine, unless you've got a specific cable that connects your machine to your laptop or computer, but usually that means that you have to keep your embroidery machine in close proximity to whatever device you're using. If you use a USB stick, your embroidery machine can be anywhere within your workspace or household, and you can just take the designs from point A to point B without having any concerns of where the embroidery machine is in relation to your devices. Other useful things to have that aren't strictly necessary but they are handy are things like a seam ripper in case you make any mistakes on your projects, a spare bobbin case and spare bobbins, so you can wind a few bobbins at a time. It makes changing out the bobbin when it runs out quicker. And also keep a few needles spare just in case the needle breaks. What I really love about the Poolin embroidery machine is that all of those things that I just listed come included in the Poolin box. Poolin sent me this embroidery machine to include in a few of my videos for review. I've already done an unboxing and brief demonstration of the product, so if you would like to find out more information about this specific machine, I will provide the link to that video below. I'll also include the links that Poolin sent me, which will take you directly to one of their distributor websites. But unless you purchase a Poolin machine which has a strong emphasis on being ready to use straight out of the box, you might need to gather that list of items I mentioned separately before you can actually start using your embroidery machine. When you turn your embroidery machine on, the machine calibrates, and this moves the sewing arm. The sewing arm moves your embroidery hoop. So you want to make sure that your machine is pulled away from any walls and obstacles so that your hoop has enough clearance to move around when the machine is sewing. The Poolin embroidery machine arrives already threaded. At some point, however, you will need to re-thread it, or you might receive an embroidery machine that isn't threaded and will have to thread it for the first time. I begin by lifting my presser foot and then insert the thread that I want to use over the spool pin. I realise that the camera angle might make this a bit awkward to see, but I found the visuals in the Poolin manual to be very self-explanatory and easy to follow. I was doing my best not to block the camera, but it's much easier if you use both hands to thread your embroidery machine. Each stage of the threading process is labelled with a number, and you just pull your thread from number to number in order to thread the embroidery machine. I will be making a short video in more detail how to thread the machine, but this was the part I found most fiddly, trying to get the thread to fit behind the last thread guide. I then lowered the presser foot again as I found applying tension to the thread made Poolin's needle threader easier to use. Once you have threaded the needle and drawn the excess thread through the eye of your needle, on the side of the embroidery machine there is a cut knife where you can trim off the excess length of thread. To install your bobbin, slide the bobbin cover latch to the right and remove the bobbin cover. Drop the bobbin into place and then using both hands, lightly hold down on the bobbin with your right hand while you pass the thread through the spring of the bobbin case with your left. And then finish by reinserting the bobbin cover. Your hoops come in two parts, a top and a bottom. Whenever I'm hooping up something, I like to work on a solid surface like a desk. Before stitching out any new design, I would stitch out a test on a scrap of the same material to ensure that I'm using the appropriate stabilizer. I use medium weight tearaway for most of my projects, unless I'm embroidering onto something lightweight and stretchy like a t-shirt, in which case I use a cutaway stabilizer as I feel it provides better support. When hooping, for the most success, I would try and cut your stabilizer to be larger than the hoop itself. Add whatever you want to embroider on top of that stabilizer, then place the top part of the hoop on top and press down. There should be a resistance when you do this, but not too much. If you're struggling to hoop the material like I am in the video, it's either because your hoop is too tight or too loose, and there is an adjustment at the bottom of the hoop. So if you are struggling, either slacken or tighten this as needed. To tell you the truth, I did find the smaller of the two Poolin hoops, that's the one featured in the video now, much more tricky to hoop than the larger one. When the hoop is placed together, the material trapped in the hoop should be taut like a drum. If it's not, then this could lead to registration issues in the design and puckering in the material. Once you are happy with your hooping, you can insert the frame onto the embroidery machine. Lift the presser foot to get the hoop under it and then the frame locks in with a firm click. To get you started sewing, the Poolin Embroidery Machine comes with 100 designs built in and 8 different alphabets. There are also lots of online libraries where you can purchase embroidery designs from, or if you want to have a go at designing or digitizing your own artwork into embroidery files, I'll leave a few links to tutorials I've already made on how to do that. I save all my files as DST format, as it is the universal embroidery file format read by most embroidery machines. I then drag and drop these files onto a USB stick, which I then insert onto the embroidery machine. Each embroidery machine has a maximum sewing field. On this particular Poolin embroidery machine, the maximum sewing field is 9.25 inches by 4 inches. I cannot sew designs bigger than that on this machine. So when you are purchasing designs, make sure that you are buying designs that fit within your machine's maximum sewing field. On the Poolin embroidery machine, you can do some basic design editing, such as rotating designs and resizing them. On the subject of resizing, I would recommend not resizing your design either 10% larger or smaller than the original design size, as this can lead to issues with distortion and designs becoming too dense. As most hobby machines are single needle, you will need to change thread every time there is a colour change in the design. For that reason, I always try and choose designs with as fewer colour changes as possible to make completing the project quicker. Each time there is a colour change, the machine will stop. To make the image on the screen more reflective of the design, you can assign each part of the design a more appropriate colour. This will help you better organise yourself and prepare for each upcoming colour change in the sequence. If you want to, you can also use the inbuilt fonts to add additional text to your design. This is really handy for personalising gifts, and the fact that you can add multiple designs to one stitch out makes it much easier to line up elements of your project, rather than trying to sew them out individually. When you're ready to start sewing out your design, if you haven't done so already, put down your presser foot. This Poolin embroidery machine has a top stitch speed of 650 stitches per minute, but as with all embroidery machines, that speed varies depending on the stitch type. Now we're going to cover some basic troubleshooting. One of the hardest things to master in machine embroidery is maintaining the correct thread tension. To check your thread tensions, sew out the letter I or H using one of the inbuilt fonts, and then check the underside of your material. I ended up stitching out a few different tension tests on the Poolin embroidery machine. This was the first one I did, and as you can see, it hasn't exactly got that like 1:3 ratio which you're supposed to have. I'll put a photo on the screen now of what it's supposed to look like. So I adjusted the top tensions. This was when I tightened it. This was when I slackened it off. This was when I slackened it off some more. And this one was when I changed the bobbin. I'm not sure why it's kind of pulling to one side. As you can see from the correct side, having the tension pull to one side isn't really affecting the quality of the stitches, how they look on top. However, it is something I would like to fix, but I found it incredibly difficult to remove Poolin's bobbin casing from their machine. I just couldn't get it out. Otherwise, I would have fiddled around a little bit more and tried to get my tensions perfect. So that is something noteworthy about this machine. Changing the top tension, it's very easy. changing the bobbin tension is not that easy because it's difficult to get the bobbin case out. That being said, the bobbin tension is very good. It's just for some reason it's pulling to one side, but like I said, it's not affecting the overall appearance of the embroidery. Other common issues in machine embroidery is having registration issues or gapping in your design. This is usually caused by improper hooping, or you are not using sufficient stabilizer for the material you are embroidering onto. If you start to see gaps in your design, try doubling up on stabilizer to give your design more support. If you start to experience thread breaks or bird nesting frequently, this could be because your needle is due to be changed. The guidance is that you should change your needle after every 8 hours of use. However, I usually sew until thread breaks start to occur frequently, and then I know it's time to change my needle. I have already made videos in the past going into these issues in more detail, so I will also leave the links to those videos down in the description below if you would like a more in-depth explanation and solution. I hope this overview of starting out machine embroidering has been helpful to you. If there are any other topics you'd like more in-depth information on, leave a comment down in the comment section below, or check out the other videos on my channel, as I have already gone over subjects like how to stop puckering and setting your thread tension. And while you're here, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel, as we're very close to hitting 10,000 subscribers, and it's a milestone I would really love to hit before the new year. As always, if you do have any further questions, please comment down below, and hopefully I will see you again in a future video. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.